Siyat Shmaya, this learning this morning should be Eschus Aliyas Neshama for Yaakov ben Reuven. I just had to flip it because you got me a little confused. Yaakov ben Reuven, Siyat Shmaya, the Eschus HaTorah and the Eschus of Shmiras and Diktuk B'Halacha should bring the Neshama of Yaakov ben Reuven higher and higher in Gan Eden Shel Maila. Okay, so we talk about desserts today. And desserts is a very large topic, but it could also hopefully be boiled down by the time we finish to actually knowing what you do. Because sometimes when you take a topic which is very in-depth and very long, you just end up walking out saying, so before I started, I knew that my minhag is not to make brachas on desserts. And now I left and I realized that I definitely don't have that minhag, but I have absolutely no clue what to do. So we're going to try to avoid that. And I saw incredible Rabbi Force's brachas book, which is probably one or two of the three most foremost sources on brachas. He has one paragraph on the whole thing. I thought that was incredible. And hopefully we'll end with a similar one paragraph so that we'll know what could and what cannot be done. But we're going to try, B'siyat Shmaya, as the Olam requested at some level, to follow a little bit more, source, text-based. And it happens to be, it is an interesting thing to do, because in the world of brachas, you come to a meal, and, they serve a fruit platter. So you take yourself a piece of watermelon, and you make hadama. You want to pay? You make there's more of that. Oh, we're good. You make hadama. So there's always someone that looks at you like, what? No, in America, you don't make brachas on desserts. So if you heard a rabbi with a beard tell you to make a bracha, so you tell them, a rabbi with a beard told me, a rabbi without a beard, a rabbi told me to make a bracha, and the guy says, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But if hopefully we'll see together inside a little bit, then it means a little bit more that we'll know. No, don't worry, for all the Hasidic blood amongst us, don't worry, we'll get all the Hasidic stories involved, hopefully. And hopefully they're not Hasidic Maises, but let's get there. So just a little bit of background. You have to know one critical Gemara. It's Gemara Brachas Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis, and if, as you could see, there's bold letters in all these sources. The purpose being those are probably the words I'm going to end up reading. So why'd I give you the whole source? Because then you feel like it's actually a Gemara. If you quote like one line, it says Chayiv. It's like, what was before there? What was after there? What's it talking about? And that's maybe a mention. Sometimes be careful to things that people show you and sourced inside and actually make sure the context makes sense. But says the Gemara in Brachos, Hilchasa, Tvarim Habaim Machmas Hasuda. These are critical words. Items that come machmas, because of a Suda. And again, I'm looking at the clock. By 10:30, we'll be finished. That's the B'siyat Shmaya plan. Tvarim Habaim Machmas Hasuda, B'toich Hasuda, inside a Suda, Ein te'unin bracha. Do not need a bracha. Lo lifnehem, not before it. V'lo achareim, and not afterwards. Why? Because you made hamaitzi. So you make hamaitzi. Hamaitzi patters everything, almost everything, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. And that's number one. Is everyone wants to know what's even the shaila of dessert, and a lot of the things I'm speaking out are all the wonderful things I've picked up over the years. Sometimes teenagers are a little bit more vulnerable and they'll actually speak their minds. Sometimes when we become adults, we're like a little bit too afraid to actually ask that question. But, so a lot of the things will speak out. Like someone says, what do you mean? Of course, bracha on dessert. Like, what's the shayla? You washed, right? So that's number one, is that when you washing patters almost everything. As we're going to see, there are certain things that it for sure doesn't patter. There's one thing that everyone agrees it doesn't patter, which is wine, which is we're going to get to. So you're saying, right, but usually you make kiddush before you wash, I hope. But let's say during the week, you never had a glass of wine? I think maybe perhaps sometimes people have a glass of wine at a meal, not with kiddush, and you have to make a bracha and a gafen. And that's, as we're going to see in a moment, that is conclusive. But the question is, continues the Gemara, if you're having food not because of the meal, during the meal. Now that's like a little bit of a tongue twister and a brain teaser. What does that mean? It's not because of the meal during the meal. Well, then why are you having it? So the answer is, I don't know what the Gemara had in mind, but if you look at our meals, half the foods we eat are not because of the meal. There's more desserts and candies and whatevers go on during a meal, at least in my house, then, that just might be my personal issue with candy, but we'll get to all those problems. So says the Gemara, Ein tu'unin bracha. You need a bracha before it, but not afterwards. So this whole shir is going to talk about a bracha rishayna, not a bracha achrayna. Bracha achrayna, everyone is going to agree, you're going to bench afterwards, and benching is going to pater and include everything you ate. And with that, we'll take one moment to mention something that we've mentioned in this room many times. I was Eicha last year at the Adir Yater event. Rameir Tzvi Bergman flew in from Eretz Yisrael, an incredible maimit to see a gadol in Avelus being wheeled in, not wearing shoes, in front of 30,000 people, probably watched by who knows how many more thousands of people afterwards. And what was his message that he came to give over? Sorry for the Chizuk in Torah, was that unfortunately there's so many people that need shidduchim. So many people need shidduchim. And if everyone here is wondering, saying, Rabbi, give us some time. You know what, we have a few years till the kids get into shidduchim. So the older people would say it creeps up on you before you know it. Okay, which is probably true. But Rav Wolbe would say, Rav Wolbe would go to a kiddush of a baby girl, and Rav Wolbe would ask the father, did he start davening for the kid? And the father would say, Avada. He said, no, for the kid's shidduch. Rav Wolbe used to tell parents, Avada, from the time the kid is born, he davened for a shidduch. It's part of that slacha that you're davening for a child. And if you think about it, that's the bracha we give, right? So we give the bracha. So you have to say that tefillah. But said Rav Meir Tzvi Bergman, B'Shem Rav Shach, and this is printed everywhere, that Rav Shach said a skula for shidduchim. I saw some who want to extend it to a skula for children, because if you think about it, you got to have the shidduch before the child. That is to say, benching from a bencher. So much so, Rav Shach, if you would get a bencher, a sitter, and in the middle, it would be missing a page. So what do we do? Okay, that one paragraph I could say by heart. You would ask for another sitter. And of course, there's all the incredible stories of people that mamish wrote down benching, etc. But something to be mechazik in certainly is the benching, is the from inside, and of course with an ounce of kavanah. Someone told me a humorous story. He saw someone at a kiddush. He saw it wasn't in this community. No one should get nervous that we're pointing fingers to anyone. And kiddush ended, and the guy made a bar al michya, beautiful Baruch Hashem. He closed the siddur and he said, thank you Hashem for the wonderful food. Now it's a beautiful thing to do, but genius, you just thanked Hashem. So it's okay. You can never say too much thanks. It's true, but I don't know if you said to your wife, thank you so much for the food, and then you said, honey, what's wrong with you? Like you just thanked me. It's a little odd. It's a little off. Okay, Baruch Hashem, it's something. It's the start. But that is what benching is. Benching is a daraisa way of thanking Hashem for the food. So now we have a machlekes rishonim. What does it mean, items that come due to a suda? What does that mean? And that's going to be the $1 million question, because, you know, when we're going to have to talk about fruit, and we're going to have to talk about candy and popcorn and potato chips and danishes, the question is, why are we eating these foods? Are they the suda? For example, what if your whole meal, what if you washed and you sat down, maybe it's a diet or something, I don't know, and only a bowl of fruit. That's what you ate. You washed, you had a bowl of fruit, and then you benched. So that bowl of fruit is that machmas your suda? I sure think so. That is your suda. And I'm not talking about, no, you washed on this whole loaf of bread and you had one bite. No, you washed, you sat down to have a fruit salad. Does this exist anywhere? I don't think so. Not yet, at least. Okay, someone can make some money. So you sat down, you had a meal of just fruit. What do you make? So in that case, is that called machmas suda or not? So we have a machlekes of Yerushalayim. Rashi, very interestingly, only interesting because it's so much not la'alach, as you'll see in a moment. The Mishnah Berurah calls Rashi to task and says, don't go like Rashi. Rashi says it's items that go together with bread. Because if you think about it, then there's a fundamental shayla that we don't have time to go into right now. What does it mean that your hamaitzi paters all your foods? What exactly does that mean? Is it that it's tuffle, it's auxiliary to your food? Is it that the bracha of hamoitzi is so chashiv that it patters everything? And it's something to think about. The Pri Megadim goes at length and to deal with it. We don't have time right now. But says Rashi, it's items that are eaten with your bread. For example, you're all eating a bagel. What's with your bagel is your egg, is your cream cheese, is things that are eaten with your bagel. But now the question is, what about other items? Let's say in the middle of your meal right now, you had a bowl of oatmeal. In the Lashon HaGemara, you had oatmeal, you had daisa. Would your oatmeal be called something you eat with your bread? I certainly don't think so. Maybe people eat oatmeal with bread. I don't think so. That would be called two different means. So according, what? That's the Gemara yells at that. Yeah, exactly. So says Rashi, in that case, it would sound like, according to Rashi, fascinating. Your oatmeal wouldn't be pottered with your bread. It sounds absolutely wild. Lamaisa, Taisis, and the Rabbeinu Yonah quotes Ariya Zakein argues, and they say, no. What does it mean, machmas hasuda? It means, like I would ask you, is it a meal food? What is a meal food? A meal food is anything that you eat as part of your meal, whether it's to satiate you, whether it's you're eating it as part of the Suda. These are all meal foods. And all of these foods would, of course, be included in your hamaitzi. And of course, it includes oatmeal, chicken, and meat. And all your meal foods is pashut. So that's how we paskin. Comes on the Shulchan Aruch on the bottom of here in Kufay and Zayin Sevalef. It says in the Shulchan Aruch that if it's kaveh suda, but his Shulchan Aruch uses those words, lafis behemes apas, that you eat it together with bread. And the Mishnah Berurah comes along. The Mishnah Berurah is not very happy over here. Mishnah Berurah on the bottom of page number 1 says, if it's coming lahasbiya ikar hasuda, it's coming to satiate. It's the main of your suda, and it's nitful. It's auxiliary to the bread. Auxiliary to the bread. Everything during the suda is auxiliary, is a sidebar to the bread. So much so, comes in the shar tzion, which is just stam. If I'm saying anything pashut, I apologize. Just these are things that sometimes people could spend their whole lives not knowing. In the Sefer Mishnah Berurah, just important to know, there's the Mishnah Berurah wrote 3 svarim in one. The Mishnah Berurah, the Bir Halacha, and the Shar Tzion were all written by the Chafetz Chaim. They're all his svarim. The Mishnah Berurah is the Psak Halacha, the Bir Halacha is the explanation, and the Shar Tzion is like your sources on the bottom. But over here in the Shar Tzion, when he sources this halacha, that anything which is a main of your meal you don't make a bracha on, he says, Ulafuke mishitas Rashi. Don't go with Rashi. And he says the lashon of the Machaber, the words of the Machaber, he doesn't like. It's dachuk. Mr. Brew over here says, of Yosef Kaira, you're a little bit off in your wordage. It's dachuk. That's not the right way to talk. Because it's not about the lafes b'emes apas, but rather it's about the ikra, the suda, and that is lamaisa, the chayodim as well, paskins, and that is the psak halacha. And therefore, any ikr hasuda, fish and meat and oatmeal and all other items are, of course, included in your hamaitzi. But now comes along.
Everyone
or
individually?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
This dessert is part of my suda.
Oh, so that's what we have to get to. So the question you're asking, which we're about to bring out, thank you, is that where does it come a point that, what do you mean? If I, as some would like to quote, in America, you're European, so we can say it this way. In America, dessert is part of the meal. That's what people like to quote. That's what people like to quote. And as we're going to see in a moment, people like to say that even though the Mishnah Berurah says one thing, but that was in Radin, that who you didn't necessarily have dessert, and sometimes you did, and sometimes you didn't. But if I always have dessert, so let's get there right now. And then with this, we open up, which is part B of the shir. So again, part A is conclusive. Anything that's part of the meal, you don't make a bracha on. Why? Because it's included in your hamaitzi, whether it's auxiliary to your hamaitzi, whether it's because your hamaitzi is so chashiv, whatever the reason is, it is part of your hamaitzi. Comes along the Chayei Adam, and he continues, and he says, and before we actually get into fruits, we're going to take what? Yeah. What is it? I have to see what it is. What's inside there? Yes, you'd make a bracha on that. So we're going to see. I'm going to say to make a bracha on that. To be a big machlekes. To be a big. Wait, before you eat it, put it on a plate, and I don't have to get all dirty. No, so we could show everyone what we're talking about. No, but we could put it on the camera. Everyone else ate it already, and they're all wondering, shoot, I didn't make a bracha. But we'll get there. So this, first of all, we're going to have to get there in a moment, but this is a wonderful looking Danish. It looks very yummy. Ellie, I don't know if you're getting it back. But it's a pastry, and it's flaky, and the dough is probably not made with just water. It's probably a sweet dough. And the cherry on top is that inside here, we could see that there's a nice filling. It's a nice filling. So we're going to get there in a moment. That's going to be the end of this year, which is Pasal B'Kisnin, which is the most complicated thing of everything. So that's why I said I would say to make a bracha. Some would say not to make a bracha. And the tzaddikim amongst us would carry around with a shtickle bisli in our pocket and would make a mezainis on the bisli and be yotzei. And be yotzei. But it's also, by the way, as we move into right now the fruit of the Chayei Adam, what we're seeing from your question, I mean, you actually finished your bagel because Europeans eat things in order. Us Americans, we don't do that. They first eat the Danish, and then you eat the bagel. Like what? Because they decided it should come second. Like me'echatesi, dessert comes first. So everyone else here ate it first. So either way, but that doesn't make a difference, as we're going to see, or maybe that does prove something. Maybe the fact that half the people on this table ate their Danish before their bagel, maybe it does prove something, maybe it doesn't prove something. Let's get there in a moment. But comes in the Chayei Adam, and he says, let's first talk about drinks. Let's talk about drinks for a quick moment. I'm only talking about drinks, really to open the floor up to ice cream and ices. What about drinks? What about drinks? It says the Chayei Adam, what do you mean? A drink is part of a meal. You don't eat without drinking. And in case you're wondering, who said? You have a raya that you don't eat without drinking? The Gemara says, yeah, the Gemara says, the Gemara in Brachos.
The Mordechai on Brachos that says
Yeah.
that if you don't drink,
Oh, Brachos Hamazon. Very good, very good. She's Rishayim. Very good. That's the next point. But number one is, the Gemara already teaches us that you're supposed to, I just learned the Gemara in Brachos last night. I wish I knew where I was. Daf Lamed, Lamed Zayin, maybe, somewhere over there. The very end of, I have absolutely no clue where. But the Gemara there says that a healthy diet is to have a lot of water with it. I have absolutely no clue where. Can you keep passing my Brachos? I'll look at it as I talk.
Couple weeks.
Yeah, no, I know. It's past where they're up to. That's the problem. But, but now where Aveli was mentioning is that interesting when it comes to benching, benching is a deraisa. When is benching a deraisa? Only v'achalta, v'savata, ubeirachta. So those are three critical ingredients. You have to eat, you have to be full, and then you have to bench. What if you're not full? If you're not full, usually you have to bench, but it's only going to be midirabanan, number one. And number two, I was right. Hey, look at that. It's Lamed. I was wrong. Wow. Things move fast when you learn. Baruch Hashem.
Says that, that's why he...
Yeah, mem over here. In the mems over here. In the mems over here. If I can find it very quickly, we'll read the Gemara. Right over here. Right over here. It's about breaking bread. The Gemara talks about different diseases. The Gemara says that you're supposed to have a lot of liquids. Kitoin lapas. Oh, Baruch Hashem. That was very pressurized. Wow, okay. Mem Aleph in Gemara Bracha says, you should literally swim your food with water. Says the Gemara, you won't come to any disease. V'kama, and how much? I'm Chisda kitoin lepas. A kitoin for bras. Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. So you're supposed to have water, and you were mentioning shittas rishayim. They have to be seveya, but famously, and this is brought down adla halach in the Mishnah Berurah, that if you don't drink during a meal, you lose your da'araisa benching. You lose da'araisa benching. So you should drink. Right? Not during. Oh, that's the Rambam's diet. That's the next level. First, we have to get the halacha. Today's Rambam's yahrzeit. Also, it's passes something over from the Rambam. That Avada, the Rambam. You know what we should all take out of the Rambam? Sometimes everyone discusses the Rambam's diet, and everyone says, "Oh, the Rambam's diet. It's so extreme like this. It's so extreme like this," and everyone likes to quote of Shmuel Kamenetsky that he does go with the diet, doesn't go with the diet, whatever it is. But one thing we should take out of the Rambam's diet is that the Rambam cared about what he ate. So what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that, I don't think I have to say anything more. That the bracha, as I saw Rabbi Forrest in that beautiful Akdama, he concludes and he says, Avada, a bracha elevates your food. But then he continues and he quotes the famous novel Bershus HaTorah. He says, but just because you make a bracha doesn't make it the right thing to do. He says, Avada, you have to make a bracha before you eat, like we spoke about last time. And like we mentioned that if you don't make a bracha, you're stealing. But he continues and he says, it doesn't just mean that you put a hechsher and you make a bracha and then you're allowed to do whatever you want in the world. Avada, there's a concept that of the higher level of kiddushim, of actually thinking about. That's what we should take out of the Rambam and his yahrzeit, is that whether one should follow his diet. I mean, I'll tell you myself, I spoke about my candy issues. I definitely don't follow the Rambam's diet, and most people do not. But at least take out the concept of a diet and the concept of eating healthy and etc. Candy's healthy; it grows on the ground, sugar cane. But either way, eating purposely. That's where I force is bringing us. Let's continue over here. So where are we up to? So drinks. Do you make a bracha on drinks? So what's the question? So says the Chai Adam, no. Why? Because as we just proved extensively, drinking is part of your hamaitzi. Comes on the Aruch HaShulchan, he says, what about schnapps? What about schnapps? Is schnapps part of... So now you have to go, and many Paiskim, and I quote Aruch HaShulchan because he's the most broad over here, but when it comes to schnapps, people want to know, why are you drinking schnapps during a meal? So if I ask you why you're drinking schnapps during the meal, you say, well, because the bottle of Coke finished, so I opened the bottle of tequila. Like, what do you mean? I'm just drinking it to drink it. So if that's the reason...
After the fish,
so we'll get there in a moment. But then there's more to there, that it cleanses the palate, and it opens the stomach, and of course... That's why you need like 14 shots to make sure that your stomach is open properly and closed and opened and all other issues. But says the Aruch HaShulchan, that if you mayim or sharim mashkin k'shlitach hasuda ain't tzarich levarich aleim bracha lefneim. Why? Because that's part of your meal. Tezeu kol machmas hasuda te'ein achila b'lo yishtiya v'akol yoidim says Aruch HaShulchan. Everyone knows. He doesn't quote a Gemara, Aruch HaShulchan, a good Rav. What's the raya that you should do? It's because what everyone does. Everyone knows a normal person with his food has liquids. Lishtais mayim or sharim mashkin hasuda. And it's all part of the meal. And then he concludes with bizmanenu. And the reason why he's saying bizmanenu, because in the world of the Gemara, there's a lot of discussion as to why one would drink yayin saraf. Yayin saraf, you ever see that yud shin yesh? Yayin saraf is a term called schnapps. That's what it is. It's just if you ever see that term anywhere. So schnapps, in the world of halacha, in the world of Gemara, it's always a shayla. Are you drinking it to open up your stomach? Are you drinking it to cleanse the palate? Why are you drinking it? Says the Aruch HaShulchan ubizmanenu hakol yoidim. Everyone knows why you have some schnapps is la'oirer taivas hameichel, to bring up the appetite, to lahashav aleib lechazaka, to return your heart back to its strength, la'achila, so you can eat more. Ve'ein sarich levarich alav v'chein minug kol ha'olam. So in case anyone was worried, it's conclusive. Says Aruch HaShulchan, you do not have to make a bracha on schnapps in any form of the word. But now the question is, now that we don't have to make a bracha on liquids, what about, and this is one of those things that everyone discusses, just no one knows what actually to do. What about when it comes to ice cream and ices? What it comes to ice cream and ices? So it's interesting. Is comes along the Arlet Sion, Sfardi over here, Rabbi Tzion Abba Shaul, and he asked him, what's the story with ice cream? And he says he splits it into two categories, and I think this is very important. He splits it into two categories, and the reason why I think it's so important is because I don't know if the shayla is bichlal relevant at all nowadays. And we'll let him talk. He says, if you have ice cream or ices that have chalav and have eggs and have sugar and have other items in it, then he says, what's the shayla? Meaning, the shayla would have been if you have a good old-fashioned freeze pop that you give to the kids, and even those nowadays have gotten fancy. The Weilers, which have, I don't want to know how much stuff inside there. They're incredible. I don't know how they make them so soft. But there's obviously something in there more than just water. What's the proof? The proof is that the regular freeze pops are just water with food coloring, and now they made even the better ones with the colorless food coloring. Chutzpah. Ruined all the thrill of being a child. Yes, I know. We're all guilty. If I know about it, it means I have it in my house also. Listen, what are we going to do? No, they're all clear. Yeah. Say the Mike and Ike's, they all taste the same. No, they don't. There's a reason why the reds go first and the yellows go last. What should I tell you? You can't argue. But says Arlet Sion that if there's other items included inside your ice cream, inside your ices, then there's no shayla. It's not just a drink that froze. No, it's not. It's a complete dish. For example, sorbet. Someone's going to say, sorbet is just frozen water. That's ridiculous. That's unadulteratedly ridiculous. Sorbet is the opposite. If anything, it's pure fruit. If you wanted to know, if you were on an IQ test, had to define sorbet, one maybe would say it's pulverized fruit and then frozen, which is what sorbet is. Sometimes you add eggs, sometimes you don't add eggs, depends on your mahalach. So, says Arlet Sion, on all those items, you for sure make a bracha, just like, as we're going to get to in a moment, I know it's a little bit backwards, you're going to make a bracha on fruit. But if it's just frozen water, then he says, maybe you don't have to make a bracha. It comes in the Shevet.
Like the grape juice.
Oh, so then for sure, then for sure.
Then for sure what?
Oh, good. That's exactly. Excuse me, I didn't understand what you said. I heard homemade. I didn't hear the end of your sentence. Homemade meaning just frozen liquid. Beautiful. So just frozen liquid. That would be the shayla. Perfect. That would be a shayla at least. And on that says the Shevet HaLevi. He wants to say it's pashit that it's not called a liquid. It's a different item. And Shevet HaLevi was not happy. He says harbe toyim bazeh. Many people make a mistake in this. And comes along with Shlomo Zalman, and he says the same thing. I would say something like that, if you just freezing mamish, you take seltzer, evil parent, you take seltzer and you pour it in and you just freeze it and you give it to the kid and you pretend it's ices. Dan, you know why you shouldn't make a bracha there, because the kid's not going to eat it, he's just going to throw it out because it's disgusting. But if it's actually frozen something, that would be a shayla. But the pashtus is it changes its form and it changes its whatever, and you make a bracha. But there you'd have on a potter and on something like that.
A lot of times they do it, let's say with sorbet specifically.
Yeah.
They serve them in between courses.
Yeah. So, palate cleansers. So we have to, we're going to leave off. There's going to be a few minor details that are going to be maybe machlekes. Let's get there. Let's first get through what's pashit. So far, we're going to get through what's pashit, and then we're going to end off with something like that. How do we quantify little ices between the thing? And we'll see maybe how the way that we eat it that might define what it is. Let's get there in a few. Remind me at the end if I don't get back to it. So again, when it comes to ices and ice cream, maybe barring your frozen orange juice and grape juice, everything else, pashtus, you make a bracha on. Now, I'll make a disclaimer before we go further. You're always allowed, especially here, because a lot of these things we're going to get to are going to be shailos, machlaikisim. One is allowed to bench and have it afterwards. Meaning, you would think, what do you mean? You're making a bracha she'enai tzricha. You're creating a bracha that you didn't need to make. That's true. But anytime you have a shaila, and because of the shaila you're creating a bracha, that is allowed. So let's say, as we're going to get to it down, like this Danish type of thing, certain cakes are going to be shailas. So one certainly is allowed to say, no, we're going to bench, and then we're going to have it separately, and then according to all shitas, you'd make your bracha rishayna and a bracha achrayna. But let's get there right now. So now we continue over here on the bottom. And what's the story with chips and popcorn and other types of snacks? Okay, we're going to do snacks. And then from snacks, we're going to go to fruit. And then from fruit, we're going to end with mizaynes. Okay, we have 8 minutes. Let's get there. So snacks. So let me just explain to you the shayla. There's a sefer Yishmael Moshe. The reason why we quote the sefer is because he speaks out so beautifully. What's the shayla of potato chips? What's the shayla of potato chips? What is a potato chip? Is a potato chip a glorified French fry, or is a potato chip a completely different item? That is the way in Lumdus, in Torah, to quantify and try to figure out if you make a bracha on potato chips. Meaning, if I serve you French fries, you just all add, what are those things called? Hash browns, tater totters. No, hash browns. What are tater totters? Let's make that up. That's what we call it for the kids. That's what we call it for the kids. It sounds more exciting. Okay, anyways, tater totters. So those things, that's your meal, right? So of course you don't make a bracha on it. So one would say, what's the difference? A potato chip is the same thing. You just burnt it a little bit more and it became a potato chip. So that's the shaila. And I'll parenthetically mention Ramosha really takes that all the way, even in the world of Bishul Akum. That's where Ramosha holds. There's even Bishul Akum on potato chips, which famously Rybelsky argued, which the whole OU is built upon. But this is really the lumdus of the Shaila. What is a potato chip? But comes along many Gedalim over here that the Sefer quotes, Rav Shammai Gross and Michelle Klein, these all the Gedalim Eretz Yisrael, they all say it's a snack. Something that's a snack. A chatif is a snack, like from the lashon of chatif, you grab it. A chatif is a snack. Snacks are snacks. So are snacks your meal? The answer is no. Snacks are not your meal. And therefore, do you make a bracha on it? Is this something that we could call dvarim habaim machmas suda? Of course not. This is something that the Mishnah Berurah would call lahasbiya? Of course not. This is what the Mishnah Berurah would call kinuach. It's an extra. It's something nice. It's something sweet. It's something fun. It's something tasty. And therefore, on a snack, you would make a bracha, a dama, or let's say, or popcorn. Now, the question would be, which actually came up over the table in Shalosh Shuddis, what if that is your meal? Meaning, you eat Shalosh Shuddis and all you're eating is popcorn. So maybe now you could say, if I were to ask you, what are you eating? You say, what do you mean? This is my main course. It's popcorn. That sounds odd, but that's what people do. So there is...
Once you wash and you make a mitzi and you eat bread, the bread is your main meal now.
Should be. But the question is, what if not? What if I had a mamish just enough to bench my bread, and all I'm eating? So the answer really is, and again, this Sefer of Zayis Bracha over here, which is the foremost authority on brachas, he wants to come along and say a chiddush, and he wants to say, he's quoting Rav Elyashiv. Anytime he says over here, I'm on page number 3, towards the top, he wants to say that if you're eating nirish of chips and popcorn, bisli, or bamba, chiyotzabai, all these wonderful items, he wants to say if they're the ikar sudasai, you're not going to make a bracha. He quotes over here Gadol Echad, which in the Sefer is Yedua Rav Elyashiv. Why doesn't he quote him by name? It's a different story. And therefore, he wants to say b'shem Rav Elyashiv, if you're eating these items as your meal, you don't have to make a bracha. L'maisa it is a chiddush. And most Paiskim do not make such differentiation. You look at Rabbi Forrest's book, you look at Rabbi Botner's book, they all say all these snack items, this is something nice. Now you have to realize, you go to dinner sometimes and they'll serve on your plate, and this is really brings out the shayla. You'll have your steak and they'll have chips on it. Sometimes you'll have like 3 potato chips on it, and that's really where this shayla comes massive, because it's your main, but it's a potato chip. So I don't know. I can't really give a conclusive answer. I can just show you what some of the poskim say over here, that would be a bit of a machlekes. The eitzah, which we're not going to go down, the eitzah root always is to eat it with bread. But I don't know, I think if anyone has ever heard such a share in their life, you walk out, it just put everything with bread. It's like, spelling BSK. It's what bracha do you make in chalent? Eat it with bread. Shkoyach, I'm not eating bread now, eat it with bread. I don't want to have every bite of my chocolate cake with bread. It doesn't really work for many of us. So for that would be a little bit of a shayla. Lamaisa, when it comes to kompot, this is a world war in the world of the Mishnah Berurah, running out of time. But the Mishnah Berurah Lamaisa writes, number one is, what does he write with his own pen? Mishnah Berurah writes, you make a bracha, kapanim rak lekinuach ebayim, and it's not lavas bezaz, v'gam loy lamazin l'sayva, and he says shekarin kampot. I know I didn't bold that, I'm sorry. Zainu bala mazain, it's a dessert, and therefore you have to make a bracha. What's the problem?
Why is it different than any other fruit?
Meaning, so of course you make a bracha, right? Avada. Maybe because it's cooked, maybe because it seems in the world of some people, compote is such an integral part of the meal. You can't have a meal without it. This is where they come from. This is Sefer Tzaddik Rav Shlomo. I have no clue what it is, but all this farm after him quote it that he had eidos. That's a Chafetz Chaim, B'Seiv Chayev did not make a bracha on the compote. And now Rav Moshe Sternbach comes along in Chuvas Van Hagos, and he starts bringing down all the stories over here. He says, I heard eidos that at the end of the Chafetz Chaim's life, he didn't make a bracha. So some want to suggest, okay, he wrote a sefer, but then what happened? He published it. And then 5 years later, he changed his mind. What's the biggest proof? If you don't hold of your own sefer, then no one else is. That he himself did not make a bracha. And the Chuvas Hanagas over here starts quoting the Gaivid from Brisk, that you should eat with bread, and he called Kamat Tzadikim, that on Shabbos, kompot is mamish the meal. Shabbos kompot, Shabbos not a kompot, it sounds like it's not a Shabbos, whereas Rav Elimelech Rumpler and Goyin Mi Chernopol and all the wonderful Tzadikim he quotes over here, he says during the week you make a bracha. Lamaisa comes on the Chadshani and he says, Mishnah Berurah wrote what he wrote, Avada, you make a bracha. The Piskei Teshuvos is a little bit, he says maybe at the end of Chafetz Chaim's life he was old and frail, and maybe his whole meal was kompot, which is a very logical explanation. It's very simple. Maybe that's all he ate. He had a little bit of bread because that's all he ate, and what he ate kompot. It was soft and it worked. So maybe that's why he didn't make a bracha. So Allah Lamaisa, the pashtus is on kompot, on fruit, avad, and that's why Rabbi Forrest writes in the book that there are those that say that Chafetz Chaim, whatever, but this should set to rest this practice, as he writes with his own pen, that you make a bracha and finished. And that's the pashtus le halacha. So far, seemingly all desserts, all extra foods in a meal, you make a bracha on, whether it's ha'etz, adama, on fruits. On fruits and watermelons and apples and whatnot, whether it's on kompot or whether it's on popcorn or bisli or potato chips. But the $1 million question, and we are basically out of time, so we'll do it nice and fast, is what is the story with Pas Haba B'Kisnin? What is the story with mezainos dessert foods? The truth is, you could give kama shiurim on what is Pas Haba B'Kisnin. It is bread, it isn't bread, it's a mezainos, it says bread-like qualities. We touched upon this last week when we spoke about wraps, and we said there could be a middle level in things, and that's really what happens over here in Pas Haba B'Kisnin. Are you eating it for the meal or not for the meal? And it gets very, very difficult. To bear halacha lamaisa paskins over here, to say this simply, there's 3 qualifications for Pas Haba B'Kisnin. It has to be nilosh, means it's kneaded with anything aside for water. There's memula, it's filled with something. And then there's parich, that it's flaky. The bear halacha paskins, you need all 3 of those to make a bracha. And anytime you don't have all 3, for example, a cookie, you don't have all 3 because the cookie is not mamula, it's not filled chocolate chip cookie. So let's see the chocolate chips, but pashas are not called filled. And according to Be'er Halacha, you would not make a bracha because of the suffix. L'maisa, the Kitta Shulchan Aruch comes along and he says 2 of them are enough. 2 of them are enough. Now, once you say that, and the Kitta Shulchan Aruch often is where all of our minhagim come from. Once you have 2 of them, that means once the dough is nilush with anything aside for water, so you get that one right away, and now it's either parich, it's cracky, it's flaky, or it's mamula, you'll get a lot of items. The Meister Ramesha Feinstein, who often, that's our Kabbalah that we go with, Ramesha comes along and he says, mine cakes. So about cakes, Shabibdina Seinu, Vada, he says, everyone will be maskim that it's called Vada Pas Haba B'Kisnin because there's sugar and there's eggs and there's oil. Kimat miruba min hakemach. That's Rav Moshe's chiddush. Rav Moshe wants to say that the whole sugya only begins when it's flour and water. Then you have to take a flour water item and take it out of bread and make it into mizaynes, cakey type of items. So you need these three qualifications. Says Rav Moshe, if the flour is partially, or we could say maybe auxiliary, because there's so much everything else, which by the way is all, Kimat all of our cakes and cookies, says Rav Moshe, you would make a bracha on it. The only thing maybe not is that you... What? So that is a good shayla. That is, you ask if I get shayla, which we'll leave. That's a good shayla. But maybe that does bring out that you should not be having a chocolate challah. That maybe it does bring out a good point. But according to Rav Moshe, basically anything aside from like a very bland loaf cake, very bland, or a very bland cracker type cookie thing, the one that... Yeah, like a tea biscuit, the things that we don't actually believe are cookies, but first, when the kids are very young, you try to trick them into being cookies. Then they get old enough to realize, and you realize, okay, what am I fighting? If I'm eating it, they could have it too. But that's a different story. And it says Rav Moshe, on all these items, you make a mezainis, and Rav Shlomo Zalman says the same. So in summation, when it comes to what we'll summarize cakes, and then we'll go backwards and do everything else. When it comes to cakes and things, can one be Seimach on Rav Moshe? You can always be Seimach on Rav Moshe. And therefore, according to Rav Moshe, there's not much of a shayla. Like kimat, every single dessert that you're going to have, you're going to make a bracha on it. Does one want to know, is there a higher level? There's always a higher level. To pater things, of course. And if you have a cake and you're not sure, so you want to know, okay, great, so I'll go and I'll have bisli. I keep on saying bisli because bisli is a quintessential item that is not, it's fried and it's certainly not pas and it's definitely not part of the suda and it's definitely a dessert, and therefore on something like that. So according to Rav Moshe, you can do that. If someone wants to be a little bit, I don't know if the word is machmir or mekel, because you're being machmir to not make a bracha, mekel tiyah, it's a little bit hard, which is the right word. So, but according to the Kitzur, there are the two qualifications which are hard to know what they are, but you often get them. According to the Bir Halacha, Lamais, according to Mishnah Berurah, there are many things that will be shaylas. When it comes to everything else that we spoke about, and we'll end with your palate cleansers, when it comes to ices and ice cream and candies and cakes, and regardless when you have it, if you serve candies during Shalom Aleichem and then the kids want to eat them during the fish, or maybe you do, so you have to make a shackle on it. If you have fruit, the only question that we didn't talk about is you have fruit as a course. As a course, well, most places can want to say that nowadays, even if it's an appetizer, there's usually another appetizer to come, and therefore it's not like its own mamish part of a meal, and therefore you would make a bracha on it. When it comes to ices as cleansers, so the answer is yes. If you mamish have, that teeny little one ices, and you just have the one bite, maybe. But we all know that usually you end up trying to sneak 2 or 3, and you forget to tell the kids that they have them, or you just take someone else's. And if you're having 3 of them, then it's not really a cleanser. What are you eating? You're having ices right now. Why are you having ices right now? You didn't eat your meat and chicken yet, and mommy said you're not allowed to have ices before you have the meat and chicken. The answer is because that's what happens when you become adults, that you're allowed to make the rules, and as we said, until you pretend your kids, whatever. So that's the story when it comes to desserts. The pashtus is kamat on everything. You do make a bracha. I will end with a disclaimer. Are there chalkim? Of course there are chalkim. When it comes to cakes, we mentioned the Mishnah Berurah will argue on certain things. When it comes to compote, there are certainly many that have kabbalas that the Chavetz Chaim was chayzer. We went with, we'll call it the most mainstream. What's called mainstream? Mainstream is your stream. Everyone else is out of the stream. Okay, shkayach. We went with what we'll call mainstream. I say Americanish because I say Rav Moshe, and I say Ray Bandner, and I say Ray Force, as those are the 2 foremost authorities on brachas. That and all these things. And that's why Rabbi Forrest has 1 paragraph in the whole book, and basically he says desserts and items that aren't part of the meal you have to make a bracha on. Finished. And in the note he says that the Shulchan Aruch, he quotes the Shulchan Aruch in this Mishnah Berurah, and he says this shall lay to rest the theory that people say that the Chavetz Chaim was chayzer, because in text he wasn't. So if one wants to go down that road, that certainly is Tavel Bracha, will say it's meritorious. If someone wants to say that they have a certain minhag avos and certain things, it definitely does exist. And we'll end that there are Rabbanim that take this extreme, and with this statement we'll end that there are still those, few and far between, that do hold that because dessert is such a main nowadays, such a main, like to the point that like you can't even have a meal without dessert, pause, Shabbos weekday, Shiloh, which even if you're going to go down this road, Pashtus, it's only on Shabbos, not during the week. So yeah, on Shabbos, in a chanami, on Shabbos maybe, then dessert will not be, and then you will not have to make a bracha, even on popcorn, even on candy, and everything, as it said, every single meal. And there is what to be said for such a theory. You could prove it probably from the words of Mishnah Berurah. But again, just be careful, even within that camp, when you're having popcorn during your Sunday afternoon lunch because the kid left popcorn on the table, that will not allow you pashtos to not make a bracha on it, because that's l'chaira. And we should all be zaycha, b'siyat d'shmaya, to be medaktek in brachas and receive the ultimate shafa and bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.